Hello, my amazing Algebra Half students. This is Mrs. A, and I love math. Today, we're doing lesson 63 in our blue books, and it's all about circles, circumference, and pi. And so we're going to learn a lot about circles in this section. We're going to learn what a circumference is and what pi is. And it's not the pie that you eat, although sometimes we celebrate Pi Day by eating pie. So here we have a circle and a circle and a circle, but we're using these circles to talk about some very important principles about circles. So in a circle, every point is the same distance from the center. And when I say every point, I mean every point that's on the circle. So this point is the same distance from the center. This point is the same distance, and so forth, all the way around the circle. There's an infinite number of points on the rim of the circle, and they are all exactly the same distance from the center. And you can kind of imagine that that's a good thing, because we use the circle for the wheels on our bicycles and the wheels on our car. And if we had a part of that circle that was a different distance from the center, we would have a very bumpy ride, wouldn't we? Okay, so that would be like a flat tire or a bumpy tire. Okay, so now we have this distance that every point is from the center is called the radius. So that radius is that distance that every point is from the center. Now, if we take 2 points on the circle that are on the rim of the circle and we connect them, that is called a chord. So that's another definition. And then if we have a chord that goes directly through the center of the circle, see the center point there? We call that the diameter. Okay, and the diameter of each diameter, there's an infinite number of diameters, because couldn't I make the diameter that way, or that way, or that way, or an infinite number of other ways that would be different orientations on the same circle. So since the diameter is going through the center but all the way across, doesn't it make sense that if this is the radius r and this one on this side is also the radius r, that the diameter is twice the radius r? It is 2 times the length of the radius r. So now we're going to learn about what circumference is. The circumference is the total distance around the circle. So you can see here I have a circle with a center, and you can see a line that I've drawn all the way around with a little arrow showing you that distance all the way around the circle, in other words, the length of the rim of the circle, would be a little bit over 3 diameters. Okay, actually 3.14 times the diameter of the circle is going to be about that length. So basically you could test this out. You could get a circular jar, okay, and then you could take a ribbon. You have to take something that's not going to stretch, like a piece of ribbon, and you're going to measure the diameter of the jar, and then you're going to cut the ribbon and wrap it around the jar and see how many times you have to wrap that ribbon before you meet the spot where you started. And it should be 3.14 times that you wrap around. So I am going to try it. So I have my flour canister. My flour canister is very round. And I took a piece of tape and I folded it on itself because I needed something that would not stretch. And I measured the tape right across the diameter of the circle. Okay, so I opened up the lid and I measured the diameter and got it just as close as I could. So now I'm going to shut the lid because I don't need it flopping around. Okay, and you can see that on here I put a little mark so I could keep track of where I start. So I'm going to start my diameter. Okay, I'm going to put it right here. This is the measure of my diameter. I'm going to start right here at the starting point. And I'm going to wrap the diameter around. Okay, and then I'm going to mark that with my fingernail very closely, marking it with my fingernail. And now I'm going to slide this over there right to where my fingernail mark would meet. Okay, I think I got that real close. And now I'm going to wrap again. Okay, so that's 2 wraps of the diameter. Okay, so then I'm going to hold my fingernail right where I stopped, again, right there. And I'm going to slide this around for the 3rd wrap of the diameter. This is a little awkward, but I'm going to get it as close as I can to right where my fingernail was. And then I'm going to wrap across the sheet of paper, but not quite make it to the finish line. Okay, so I wrapped the diameter 3 whole wraps. Okay, and I did not quite make it. So now, if I took this little spot, this little part that didn't quite meet, it should be about 14/100ths of the length of the diameter piece of tape. Isn't that cool? Right? So the diameter is the width across here. That's the diameter. And we wrapped the diameter all the way around 3 times, but it didn't quite make it. And that's what the ancient Greeks found out when they discovered that no matter how big or small the wheel was that they were trying to measure, they would really carefully measure the diameter of the wheel, and then they would wrap it around just like we did, and it wouldn't quite meet every time. So they measured that distance that it didn't meet, and they divided that by the length of the diameter, and they got 0.14. So we have a formula. So we're going to say that the circumference, let's go back to this board, the circumference is not equal to 3 diameters, because 3 diameters doesn't quite get there. But the circumference is 3.14 times the diameter. Okay, so about 3.14 diameters would wrap around. Now, pi is the exact calculated number that the Greeks came up with after many, many experiments and trials. So pi is the exact number. 3.14 is a good approximate for our calculations. So anytime we use 3.14, instead of pi, which is the exact number, we use these little squiggly lines to mean approximately. Okay, but if we use pi instead of 3.14, we can say it's exactly equal. So we have 2 very important formulas that we're going to use. And the first one we have been talking about, and that is the circumference is approximately 3.14 times the diameter, but it is exactly pi times the diameter, or we could write exactly 2 pi r. So you will often hear 2 pi r because even though the 2 and the r go together, because 2 times r is diameter, it just sounds catchier. 2 pi r, 2 pi r, okay? Instead of 2r pi. So 2 pi r, and it's easy to remember. So pi d or 2 pi r. And those are the formulas for the circumference. And then another very, very special circle formula is the area of a circle is pi times r squared. So I take the radius, I square it, I multiply times pi, and I get the exact area of the circle. Now, if I want to do a little bit simpler math, because pi can only be done with the calculator, I'm going to use 3.14 times r squared. And remember, r squared is when I take r and multiply it by itself, and r is the radius. So now we're going to do some examples. We only have one practice question on this lesson. So then we're going to do, one example, and then we're going to do our one practice. So this should be a fast one. Okay, so circumference, remember the formula is 2 pi r or pi d. Okay, so remember the 2 and the r multiplied together give me the d. So pi d or 2 pi r. And that is going to be the exact formula, but it's hard for us to calculate. So we use an approximate formula, which is 3.14 d. Okay, so here we have the radius is 10 centimeters. And know that the diameter is twice the radius, so the diameter will be 10 centimeters. And then we're going to multiply that diameter by 3.14. And now I need to do that math. Okay, so I'm going to do this right here so I can leave these both on the same board. Okay, so we're using that one. We can leave the pi d here because that's the one we're using. And then we're going to take 3.14 times 10. But remember what happens when I multiply by 10? Doesn't my decimal just move one spot to the right? So I can multiply it out, but the fast way is just to write 31.4. 31.4 because I started with 3.14 and moved the decimal one place to the right. Isn't that a faster way to do it? So 31.4 is the circumference. So 31.4 centimeters is the circumference. And that, remember, is approximately, the circumference is approximately 31.4 centimeters. Now I noticed that in your book is using the equal, but most math books are going to use the approximate. Anytime you replace the exact pi with an approximation, you're going to use the little squiggle lines to mean approximately. Okay, so now we're going to find the area. And the area, the formula for the area is pi r squared. And r squared is just the radius squared. So in r's, we're going to use an approximate. Pi is approximately 3.14. And then we're going to multiply by r squared, which is 5 squared, which is 25. Okay, so I'm going to get another little board to do that. Okay, so one thing I forgot to tell you is, remember, I had 5 centimeters was my radius, and I squared it. So now I had 5 centimeters times 5 centimeters, which is 25 centimeters squared. So we write 25 centimeters squared, or square centimeters. So now we're ready to go. So I'm going to erase this down here so we have some room to do our math. So 4 times 5 is 20, carry the 2. 1 times 5 is 5 plus 2 is 7. 3 times 5 is 15. 4 times 2, we're going to move in 1. 4 times 2 is 8. 1 times 2 is 2. 3 times 2 is 6. And we're going to add 0, 15, 5, 6, 7, 8, and a 7, and 2 places for the decimal, and that answer, 78.50 centimeters squared. And that should be our area, okay? And it is. They have 78.5 centimeters squared in the book. So I want you to notice that our circumference is a linear measure. It's as if I took my circle and I made a nice little saw line and unrolled my circle. Okay, so remember, I took a linear measure and I just folded it around the circumference. The circumference is just in centimeters, not in centimeters squared. It's a measure of distance, just like we would measure with a ruler, but a real ruler doesn't bend around a circle very well. So I made a very floppy, very nicely floppy little ruler. Okay, that was the length of the diameter. So then look down here at our area that I wrote on the board. Our area is in centimeters squared because the area is all of the surface that is being exposed here. So if I were going to measure all of that, not just the distance around, but I wanted to cover this, that's what I'm talking about. That's the area, okay? So area is coverage, and circumference is a distance. It's a length, okay? So there's your board, and now it's time for us to do our practice problem. Oh, they gave us a very easy practice problem because we have a radius that is a multiple or a power of 10. So that's going to be very easy for the calculation purposes, isn't it? So our radius is 100 meters. This is a very, very large circle, okay? You think of 100 yards, I think, is a football field, and a meter is just a little bit longer than a yard. Wow, this is a big circle, okay? So now, what is the diameter? If our radius is 100 meters and our diameter is 2 times the radius, then wouldn't our diameter be 200 meters? Okay, and then our circumference. Remember, our circumference is exactly pi d, or 2 pi r. Those are 2 equivalent formulas. We're going to use the pi d, so we're going to have pi, we're going to approximate as 3.14, and our diameter is 200 meters. Well, this is easy. So this is going to be in meters. So now this is pretty easy because I already know that 3.14 times 2 is 6.28. And then the 0, 0 is just going to move my decimal place 2 places to the right. And I have to do no math. So my answer for my circumference is going to be 6.28 when I double that, and then move the decimal place 2 places to the right, or 628 meters. because circumference is linear. It's a distance. So we're going to have 628 meters. Okay, so there is our circumference. So now our area is pi r squared. R is 100. So what is 100 times 100? Okay, when I'm multiplying by powers of 10, every time I have a 0, I move my decimal one place to the right. You see 4 zeros. So it's going to be 1, 0, 0, 0, 0. That's the answer. Okay, so I'm going to multiply pi. So I'm going to approximate 3.14. And then I'm going to multiply the 3.14 times 10,000. Okay, so we're going to do times 10,000. And that's going to move this decimal place 1, 2, 3, 4 places to the right. So right now my decimal place is right there. But if I take that decimal place and I move it 1, 2, 3, 4, then I have 31,400. And that is area. So that is 31,400 meters squared. Because area is always square units. So let me hold the board a little closer. So our circumference was 628 meters. I hope you got that one. And our area is 31,400 meters squared. And it's time for you to go do your homework. So there's the whole board. Hopefully you can see all of it. And we are done with lesson 63, all about circles and circumferences and pi. And this is Mrs. A, and may God bless your day.